Welcome to Phorge Mathematics. I'm Ryan, and today we're going to go over the properties of real numbers: commutative, associative, distributive, identity, and inverse. So every equation you'll ever solve runs on these 5 rules. Learning them now means you'll never have to just memorize the steps again. So let's go ahead and hop into it.
Phorge.
Okay, so we're going to go over the learning objectives for the properties of real numbers. So first, you'll be able to name and define the 5 core properties of the real numbers, apply each property to simplify expressions, identify which property justifies a step in a problem, and then use those properties to solve and check equations. Let's hop into the first property. The first one is the commutative property. So the key idea here is that order doesn't matter. A plus B is equal to B plus A. And A times B and B times A equal each other, where A and B are just a real number. So order doesn't matter. So, but this is only for addition and multiplication. So let's say 4 plus 7 is equal to 7 plus 4, which is just equal to 11. Now, we could also do the same for multiplication. 6 times 3 is equal to 3 times 6, equal to, both are equal to 18. The next property is the associative property. So the key idea here, it doesn't matter how you group it. So A plus B plus C is equal to A and then the same grouping, or the other grouping of B plus C. And the same thing with multiplication. A times B and then times C, or then A times and then B times C. So grouping doesn't matter, and it's only for addition and multiplication order. So commutative, the order matters, and then associative, it's the grouping. So let's say we're loading a truck. We have 50 pounds plus 30 pounds plus 20 pounds. So this is equal to 100 pounds. But also, if we did we could group it the other way. So we have 50. So this is equal to, if we were to add it up, 50 plus 30 is equal to 80 plus 20 equals 100. And then if we were to do it this way, we would add up the parentheses. We have 50, which is also equal to 100. So the key distinction is the commutative is all about order, and the associative is all about grouping. Next, we're going to go over the next property, the distributive property. So the distributive property is multiplying. The core idea here is multiplying a number by a sum, or difference means you multiply it by each item inside the parentheses. So as you can see here, we're distributing the A. So then you get to A times, and then in parentheses B plus C is equal to A times B plus A times C. And it's the same concept here, but for subtraction. So this is the one that students can use constantly. Every time you expand parentheses, you can use this property. So let's say we're buying gear for 5 soldiers. So we got 5 soldiers. And each soldier needs a $30 jacket and a $20 rucksack. So what we have here is $30 jacket and a $20 rucksack. So now we could do it 2 different ways. You could distribute it. So 5 times 30 is 150, or, and then you could do 5 times 20, which is just equal to 100. And then that comes out to 250. So for the 5 soldiers to get all their jackets, we would need to do, it'd have to be $250. Now we could also do it the other way. 30 plus 20 is equal to 50. The 5 times 50 is equal to 250. Same answer. Okay, move on to the next property. The next property is the identity property. So there's 2 different ones. There's one for addition and one for multiplication. So for addition, a plus 0 is equal to a. So whatever number you start with, that's what you get. And then a times 1 is equal to a. So the core idea here is there's a number you can add or multiply that doesn't change anything, and that's the identity. So in plain language, 0 is the identity for addition. You add 0 to anything, nothing changes. 1 is the identity for multiplication. Multiply it by 1, nothing changes. So let's say you're playing a game and then you just have a bad round. So what you have is, let's say you start off with 5 points. You have a bad round. You had 0 because you didn't score any rounds or any points that round. So now you still have 5 points. So let's say you're playing a game and you're multiplying your kill count by 1. It doesn't change your kill count. These are just ghost operations. So let's say your kill count is 20. Multiplied by 1, you still have 20. Okay, let's move on to the next property. The next property is the inverse property. So you have the additive inverse, so a minus plus negative a is equal to 0. And then you also have the multiplication inverse. So a times 1 over a equals 1. And a key thing to remember here is a cannot equal 0 when you're doing this. If you do this, if you have a is equal 0, the multiplicative inverse of you just can't have a is equal because you can't divide by 0, which is what you're doing here. So really easy for the additive inverse, you just flip the sign. So let's say we just run for 15 yards, so you had a gain of 15 yards. But then, oh no, there's a what's it called, face mask, so that's minus 15 yards. What does that equal? 0. So on the multiplicative side, if you double something and then half it, you're going to go right back to the start. So let's say we have 2 items. We need 1 over 2. Multiply it together. What do you get? 1. So that's the multiplicative and addition identity properties, or inverse properties, excuse me. Okay, so now we're going to go through some worked examples. So what we're going to do here is we're going to identify the property that each one of these is. So the first one is 8 plus 3 is equal to 3 plus 8. So are we changing the order? Yes. So it's addition, the order flips. So we reverse the order. And so what that means is this is the commutative property. Now we're going to go do, for example, 2. So we're changing the grouping. See that? So we have 4 times 5 and then 5 times 2. And we're changing the grouping. So what does that mean? This is the associative property. Okay, so now we're going to simplify. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to distribute 4 to the 2 terms within the parentheses. So we have 4 times 3x plus 4 times 7. So what does that mean? We have 12x plus 4 times 7 is 28. And now we have 12x plus 28. Trap. Okay, so watch out for this trap for example 4. So does 10 minus 3 equal 3 minus 10? No. Why? Because the commutative property, which says the order can be flipped, can only be done for addition and multiplication. But this is neither addition or multiplication, it's subtraction. And we can even work out the example, or work out each side to prove that they're not equal to each other. So 10 minus 3 is equal to 7, and 3 minus 10 is equal to negative 7. 7 is not equal to negative 7. Okay, let's go over some common mistakes. And this is one we just actually went over with the commutative and associative. It's only for addition and multiplication, not subtraction or division, which is what we just looked over in the last property. Commutative is the order, and the associative is equal to grouping. Don't mix those up. Okay, the next is when you're using the distributive property. So you must distribute to all the terms inside the parentheses. So if you have multiple, which you will have multiple terms, make sure you distribute to all of them, even if there's more than 2. The additive inverse and does not equal the multiplication inverse. Opposite sign does not equal the reciprocal. So remember, when you're doing the additive inverse, it's negative a, and when you're doing the multiplicative inverse, it's 1 over a. Do not add a negative to that. And then the final one is 0 has no multiplicative inverse because 1 over 0 doesn't exist. It's undefined. Okay, so we have some additional practice problems. Go ahead and pause the video and work this out for yourself. Okay, I hope it took some time, and here are the answers. Okay, so a quick recap of today. So the commutative and associative property, they rearrange and regroup, and the result stays the same. But that's only for multiplication and addition. If you try and do that with division or subtraction, you're going to get the wrong answer. Distributive. So this is when you can multiply every term within the parentheses. You're going to have that number out front, and then you can multiply it to the other terms within the parentheses. And then the identity and the inverse. These are the undo and the neutral operations in math. So these properties are the engine behind every equation you'll solve, especially when we get to combining like terms and solving linear equations. So if this was helpful to you, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Drop any questions you have in the comments, or you can email me those at phorgemath@gmail.com. Go ahead and follow and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at Phorge Mathematics and on X at Phorge_math, and I'll catch you in the next one.